So just a little bit of a refresher of something that we're working on. We are talking about what it means to be a community, to be a Christian community, to be a grace-filled community, to be a loving community. As we move forward as a church, as we move forward as a community, as we seek to reach out and enter into these changes, we are reminded that we are ambassadors for Christ, that we have a ministry of reconciliation, that we are offering that to each other and to the world around us. And so this is a quote that I had up on the screen a while ago from the King Center that is just a reminder of what we're trying to do and we're trying to be. It says, each act of reconciliation, each time that we are repairing something that's been broken, something that has been caught up in sin, something that has been hurt in these different ways, each time that we take that we make an effort towards reconciliation brings us one step closer to being the beloved community that we are invited to be. And so that is a focus of who we are and what we're doing, and we're trying to get rolling on some things, to get our feet moving, to be awakened to the love that God has for us, to be doing the things that we are invited to do. And we know as a church that it's time for us to begin to grow. It's time, we've had new people coming in. We want to see this begin to swell. We want to see this begin to happen more and more. And we can't do that if we're not committed to it. If we're not committed to the ministry of reconciliation, if we're not committed to the idea of evangelism, if we're not committed to the ideas of creating a beloved community. And that's what our Lenten sermon series is about, as we're talking about the one another's of our church life. But I want to recognize one thing that happened this week that I think is a good illustration of what we're trying to do. Right, the call is to begin to practice evangelism, to practice an invitation, a hospitality, a welcoming spirit. And I just want to take time, and I try to do this. If I see something good happening in our community life, I want to take time to recognize it. And so yesterday, we celebrated Nash's 6th birthday. Happy birthday, Nash. And we took time in that celebration to also have a prayer of dedication for him, to give him to God, to say that Tim and Nash are committing to growing as disciples of Jesus Christ, that Tim as a dad will do his best to develop Nash to be someone who's deeply in love with Jesus Christ and his church. But I wanted to recognize Tim for his act of what he did and use this as a sense of encouragement for all of us. Now, Tim said he wanted to welcome in Nash's friends and have a birthday party that would have that. So we got the McDonald's party room, and there's a place to play, and there were lots of kids there. But Tim also said, but I want the adults to be able to interact too. It's not just a party for the kids. And so Tim invited several of us from the church to come and be a part of this. Yes, some of the kids from the church, but then a broader swath of adults to interact with the adults of Nash's friends and groups and to combine. And so one of the things we've talked about in church life is, we're not necessarily the proclaimers, the ones who are out there preaching on the street corner and demanding these kind of things. But what we want to do is we want to be a community that offers inroads into our community. In fact, what we want to do is we want to go out and we want to live our community in places that can have an impact and extend that to others, to be a bridge. That's what we say in our mission statement, that we want to be relational bridges to extend God's love. And so now, will anybody from the party be coming to church? I don't know that. And in fact, there wasn't even a direct invitation said, come and be a part of this church. But Tim, in his efforts to reach his friends and to love his friends and Nash's friends, invited his community to come and assist him in that love. That is evangelism. That is living our faith in a way that says what God is doing here is worthwhile. And I want you to see this because I want you to see God. So thank you, Tim, for that act. I don't even know if you really realized that you were doing evangelism there, but you did, and that was good. And I think people saw our community there. And thank you for those of you who are able to come and bless Nash and Tim, but also to be an example of what God is doing here in the world. So we offer people Jesus. But where they see Jesus is in our community. That is who we are. It is our central value, community, in diversity, in love, being honest about who we are and pursuing depth together. Those are our values. So we begin to live those out. So with that in mind, that's what I wanted to lean into in the sense of what is this community that we're offering people? It's a community of love and grace and strength. So in our sermon series, we've done a few love one another's. Our superintendent, our president/superintendent here in our group of churches was here a couple weeks ago, and he preached an introduction to this sermon series, inviting us to love one another, to be willing to wash each other's feet, to be able to be here and know that love. God has loved us so that we can act in love. And last week, I got to present the idea of serving one another, of being servants, of meeting people where they are and coming alongside of them and offering a hand or a word or a presence. Serving one another. And today we're going to hear a third step in that. There's really not that much of a difference in all of these. They all intertwine. But they become the grounding of a beloved community that includes people. And so today the invitation is to bear one another's burdens. This might be a little bit harder. A little bit harder to understand, maybe. A little bit harder to do. But it's an invitation that we can be working on this. And so then we say, what does that mean for us? What does that mean as we seek to live into this sense of community? I have a book. This is one produced by the Covenant Church. It's the Reflections on our Covenant Affirmations. One of our affirmations, we have the centrality of Scriptures. We have the necessity of new birth. We have that we believe in the whole mission of the church. But one of our affirmations that's central to us is the church is a fellowship of believers, which seems simple, but it's that sense of what we're committed to. It says the Covenant Church wants to realize the value of the ideal of community. And so the roots of that view of a church for us are found in two basic New Testament emphases. And I'm going to read this first one to us that talks deeper again about what it is in community. It says the church is a communion or a fellowship of believers characterized by mutual participation in and sharing of the new life in Christ. Paul calls the Christian community the body of Christ, a community composed of many members, each different and mutually interdependent. It is when we are in community with one another, there's that word, one another, It is when we're in community with one another, when all of God's people are interacting with one another in worship and service, that God's will is most clearly revealed and discerned. And so we seek to do that. We seek to live into that and to know that. And so we're going to talk about what it means to bear each other's burdens, to help carry the load. Jesus invites people, all who are weary and burdened, there's the word, to come to him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Because his burden is light and his yoke is easy. Because it's part of that community. So we are extending that continual sense of invitation to bear one another's burdens, because we all have challenges, we all have sins, we all have difficulties, we all have days that are better than others, and we are here to walk with one another and support one another through that. So as I was thinking about that this week, I was reminded, you guys know I am a dog lover. I've always had a dog. Sometimes I've had two. Now I have my in-laws' dog with me, which I love, but I'm not enjoying the walking as much because he's kind of like my father-in-law, just kind of all over the place there. Oh, but wait, I didn't say that. Yeah, he's on a cruise. I don't have to worry about that. So we have that. But I remember when I first got a dog. And I was going to be, one of the ideas was I was going to run with the dog. I have to walk the dog anyway, so I'm going to run. Well, my first dog decided he wasn't a runner. He would just stop, put his feet down, and turn his head, and like you couldn't move him. But when he was little, we wanted to take him out and introduce him to walking, and so we put him on leash. Here's my dog, by the way. You can see we were friends. He let me get away with just about everything with him, but this is my buddy Maddox. Many years together, and when I first took him for a walk around the streets and the river around Waltham, I made a mistake. I went way too far, and this poor little puppy just couldn't continue. Just fall down tired. Just wanted to sleep on the side of the road. I didn't want to sleep on the side of the road with him. And so what did I do? I picked him up and I carried him home. I helped him along the way. Now, I have to confess that he may or may not carried the load for me for like 3 or 4 years while I was wrestling with depression and wrestling with these problems. And he was a presence for me that helped sustain me through that time. So he repaid that to me, that one little time I carried him out of along the river. But that's the idea, right? That we can bear each other's burdens. I had to include this picture just because, I just love this picture. Josie kind of stole him from me. They became best friends, but that's okay. That was how we did that. Was always there to comfort. But that teaches me about what it means to bear each other's burdens. There are times when we might need to be carried by our brothers and sisters in faith. There are times where we're struggling with something, that we need to have a community that we can come and we can say, you know what, I'm hurting right now. I'm struggling. I'm lost. I'm bruised. I'm broken. And I need your help. And a community that loves is there for us. Not to look down on the other one, not to judge them, not to say, you know what, you owe me if I help you here. Things do tend to come around. We do get that benefit later, but we're invited to bear one another's burdens. Our lectionary text in the gospel today is the story of Jesus going to speak to the woman at the well on their journey. She approaches the well and he says, "Woman, will you fetch me some water?" She didn't just say, "Do it yourself." She said, "Why are you asking me? I'm a Samaritan woman. We don't talk. We don't live in this way. We don't have these kinds of interactions." How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? And Jesus looks at her and says, you know what? If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you the living water. You don't even have a bucket. How are you going to do that? Are you better than Jacob? And Jesus says, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give them will become in them a spring of water gushing up into eternal life. Jesus is saying that if when you come to me and you receive that gift, you're going to be awakened with life like you've never known it. And the woman says, "Can you give me that water, please? That's what I want." And Jesus, for whatever reason, says, "Go and call your husband. Bring him back here." And she says, "I have no husband." And Jesus said to her, "You're right in saying that you have no husband. You've had 5 husbands. And the one that you have now is not your husband's. What you have said is true." Now, you could hear that as some sense of judgmentalism. You could hear that as a pointing out of this woman's faults or struggles. But what this woman experienced was this man who shouldn't have talked to her anyways. Men and women didn't talk to each other like this. Jewish men and Samaritan women didn't talk to her like this. But Jesus did and said, "I know who you are. I know what you're going through. And I'm still speaking with you. You still belong." And so then this woman runs back and she tells everybody, "Here's this man who knows me, who's here to save us." So in this, you can see a little bit of the effect of Jesus here bearing this woman's burdens. I don't know. We have no idea why she had 5 husbands. We don't know if each of them had died successively. We don't know if that just meant that she was moving from husband to husband. This part of it means nothing to the story, other than Jesus saying, "I'm talking to you, and I'm there." So in some sense, if we are going to build on this and say we're going to bear one another's burdens, we're going to bear one another's struggles, one of the first things that we need to do is simply talk to each other. To say, "I see you. I see you. I see your struggles, and I'm going to stay with you right here in this moment because you belong. You belong here in life." And so we want to bear each other's burdens. This is the text that Paul uses when he is coming up with this concept. When he's sharing this, it's the text that is saying that we're using for our main piece here. He says, if anyone thinks there's something when they are not. Actually, I went this backwards here. Let's start here. Brothers and sisters. This is verse 1 of chapter 6. He's just gone through an invitation to live the Spirit, right? To see the fruit of the Spirit being born in the life, the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control that the Holy Spirit gives, that freedom that people now have to love one another, freedom from the law, but the invitation to serve one another in that if we're going to be this beloved community that he's talking about, then there's going to be this reality. But he also says there's still sin, and there's still struggles, and he says, brothers and sisters, if someone in your space is caught up in sin, you who live by that Spirit, who have that fruit within you, should restore that person gently. That doesn't mean just let them keep sinning. It also doesn't mean, oh, psst, Bob, did you see what they did over here? It means keep them in your fellowship and talk with them and love them and be with them on this journey. Restore that person to the love and the grace of God. But watch for yourselves so that you're not tempted to go in that direction. But this is the word. Carry each other's burdens. And in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. The law of Christ is the law of all. Remember, he said, not a jot or a tittle, nothing is going to fall from this word. I'm fulfilling it. And now we're fulfilling it when we create a community that can walk with each other in our struggles, in our burdens, in our worries, in all of those things. And so it continues on. It says, if anyone thinks they're something, when they're not, they deceive themselves. And each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else, for each one should carry their own load. Now, if that isn't confusing, I don't know what it is. Okay? Carry each other's burdens, but everybody has to carry their own load. I'm not sure. But it's that sense that says, yes, we are responsible for who we are and how we live. We're all going to have to stand before the judge and see how our lives is lived. But I think Paul is saying, but you can't do that alone. So share with it. You are responsible for your life. But you cannot live your life on your own. You cannot really carry your burdens all by yourself. You need each other. At one point, you'll be strong. At another point, you'll be weak. Sometimes you're the carrier. Sometimes you're being carried. But that's what a community does. They come alongside of each other and help and live and serve together. And so, this is one thing that I saw this week as I was wrestling with this concept of bearing each other's burdens. This was written by Abigail Murish. I have no idea who she is. She's a blogger on the internet. But she quoted Dietrich Bonhoeffer, so that's probably how I came across of her. So she's got to be okay. But what she says here is actually really good. She says, as Christians, we're instructed to live in community with our Christians' brothers and sisters and share their burdens. Despite the clear commands to care for our Christian family, what it looks like to obey these commands concretely is intimidating. It says, lately I've been convicted by the command to bear the burdens of those I love in this season of life. And she says, here are 5 ways I'm trying to do that. Which I find interesting because she only put 4. But, I'll bear that burden of her not counting things right. But this is what she says. In order to bear each other's burdens, these are things that you can do. Listen to each other. Honestly listen to each other. Not to win an argument, not to show that you're right, not to do any of these things, but to simply tell each other our stories and hear who we are. And then she goes on and she says, I'm weeping and lamenting. I'm walking alongside of people. And when they're joyful, I'm going to rejoice with them. But when they're hurting, I'm going to sit with them. And I'm going to weep alongside of them. I'm going to lament alongside of them. I'm going to say, yeah, that doesn't seem fair. And I'll be here with you in that journey. And then she says another thing that she's trying to do is create a place of belonging, a community of belonging, where people don't have to be ashamed, where they know that they belong, where they can experience God's grace because we're giving each other God's grace. And she's showing up and offering help. She's serving. She's actually doing things. She actually is carrying people's burdens for them. You're helping someone. You're helping them move a couch or a piano. Pay for somebody to move the piano. Never mind. But you're helping them with these things they need. You're bearing their burdens, literally, together with them. Now, they're not just going to sit there probably and watch you carry the couch up the stairs. You're going to do that together. And that's part of the reality. Now, she does go on in the article to talk about she's going to share her faith with people. She's going to pray for people. Maybe she meant to bold one of those. I don't know what it was, but I see 4. There are 5. There are different ways that we can do that. But we need to bear one another's burdens. It's at the heart of what community is. And so in closing, I want to talk about this because this has been a hard week for me to think about bearing people's burdens. I'll just show you another picture. This is my family growing up. I'll just give you a hint. I'm one of the boys in this picture. You'll have to figure out which one of the boys I am. I'll let you guess that one. But this was our family. We had 5 kids in the family. 2 of us were biological to my parents. 2 were adopted. At that time, they were considered the hard-to-adopt people because they were the product of mixed relationships, they were biracial kids that do we put them with a black family? Do we put them with a white family? Do we put them in an orphan? What do we do with these? Back then, that's what they referred to them as, unfortunately. But they came into our lives as babies. Those are the 2 in the middle. And then the one on the end is my foster brother, Donald. Donald came into our lives. My parents were volunteering at a orphanage in Kansas City, and were just working. It was Niles' home for children, I think mostly boys. And then we would bring some of the kids out to our little farm for a weekend or something like that so they could experience a different kind of life outside the city. And Donald was one of the people that we brought out for a weekend. And he was just a joy, a wonderful young man who had an awful, awful upbringing. And so we decided to say, why don't you just come live with us? And so when he was in grade 9, all the way through sometime after he graduated from that all-white high school that we lived in the middle of, we went to in the middle of Kansas, he came in and lived with us and was a real blessing to me. But his burdens were something beyond anything that I can imagine. He had several kids in his family. They had a house fire and lost 2 or 3 of his brothers in a house fire when they were young. And somewhere after that, whether it was because of the state or because the mom realized that she couldn't have all of them, Donald was sent off into foster care. My understanding is that they kept his twin sister but sent him away. He would go to these foster homes and would run away. His mom would wake up and see him sleeping on her front porch, and she'd call the authorities and say, come get him. Which maybe is what she had to do. I don't know the details of that. But it didn't matter to Donald at that time. It just was another rejection. He went into foster homes, and in those foster homes, he was abused. His dad had been killed in a cab after a poker game or a pool game. He did not have many opportunities in life. And so we brought him into our family and said, you know what? We can bear some of these burdens together. And so it's a place that I learned early on to just come alongside of people and include them. Now, that put burdens on us, and unfortunately on my sisters in ways that are beyond my scope of understanding. Abusers, those who are abused tend to abuse. Eventually, Donald went into the Navy, and as one of my mentors said, well, that's a 4-year ticket to alcoholism. And that's what it was. And when he came back from that, he was in and out of our lives because he was in and out of jail. He just couldn't stop drinking. And he needed to drive. And he needed opportunity. And it just wasn't coming. And so along the lines, we lost touch with him, which was always hard on me because he was my brother. I was not anything other. He was my brother. But I couldn't go home and look him up because of the problems with my sisters. It just wasn't fair. And so we lost touch with him. The last time I talked to him, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. He was probably drinking, and he dialed my phone. I don't know how he got my number. And he said, I know it's late. I just need to know what time I can call you tomorrow. This was 20 years ago. And I said, yeah, call me around 6. And he didn't call. And that was it. That was the end. That was the last time I saw him. And every once in a while, what I would do is I'd Google him to see, and I'd find places maybe he was arrested again, or, I would look. Well, this week I Googled him just by chance, and I found his obituary. He had been 2 years ago walking on a street and hit and run, killed. We could never bear his burdens to the place that could get him to life and wholeness again. We tried. I wish we could have done more. Life is difficult. And so it's hard for me to talk about this in today because this is what my text was, but this is what my life was this week. That's been a real burden on my heart because I have nobody to grieve him with. My mom and I have talked about it, but we can't share beyond that. His obituary was wrong. It didn't list the correct school. It didn't list his kids' names. It just listed his mom's name. I don't know who wrote the obituary, but here was this man that we tried to help and we tried to live and tried to be together and was a gift to me, who died alone on the side of a road, not knowing people. Trying to help people with their burdens is not easy. It's hard. And I realize that in some ways what I'm doing is I'm putting my burden of grief on you today. Some people say, yeah, this might be your pulpit, but it's my therapist chair. I mean, in some sense, I understand that there's this sense of what I'm doing is I'm paying tribute to a man that nobody paid tribute to, whose burdens were far too much for any of us to carry or to understand. That's the world we live in. But as a beloved community, our church welcomed him. Our church supported him. Our church loved him. And he was amazing. 3-sport athlete, homecoming king in an all-white high school, all of those things because he was just such a magnanimous person, but his burdens ate him away from the inside out. We don't want that for anyone. Which is why I believe God calls us into community to create places where someone like Donald might stand a chance, might find a home, might find community. We won't be successful all the time. But I know Donald's life was better because of us. church. But it was hard in the long run. So I'm sorry if this is just laying a burden of grief on you today, but I wanted to pay tribute to Donald, and this was a place that I could do it. In a place where it makes sense to call and to say, we need each other. And we can bear each other's burdens. And it'll hurt sometimes. Hopefully not to the place of hurt that my sisters experienced in that. We build protection into it. But we offer life and love and grace and goodness to people who need it. Which is you, and it's me. We need each other. And we need that salvation. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for creating a burden-bearing community where we can come alongside of each other and listen to each other and love each other and support each other, grieve with each other and celebrate with each other. But what we're doing, God, mainly is pointing towards your salvation, your gift of life and love, your gift of hope and grace. Hear our calls to you and to each other. And may you put us into a place of mutual community where we can bear one another's burdens and celebrate your salvation.